There's a kind of silence that doesn't belong in a family dinner. The kind where no one meets your eye and every place at the table is taken, except for yours, which doesn't exist. I stood there, holding the pie I'd baked that morning. Blueberry and lemon, still warm, the way my daughter used to love it when she was 12. No one reached for it. No one stood up. Just 30-something faces turned toward their wine glasses or their phones, pretending they didn't see me. "Mom," Lydia said, not even rising from her seat, "we didn't know you were coming." "I was invited," I answered, my voice steady though my hands trembled under the foil-covered dish. "Last week. You told me to be here at 6 sharp. That was before we finalized the guest list," her husband Mark cut in. "We had to limit it to close family and clients. It's mostly for business." Close family. My hand clenched the pie dish tighter, as if I could squeeze the insult out of it like lemon juice. "I am your mother," I said simply. Lydia glanced at the long table, then back at me. "There's no seat left, Mom." The words hit harder than I expected. Not shouted, not cruel. Just shrugged out, like an afterthought. No seat left. I felt the sting of 30 eyes now watching, not pretending anymore. A few of them whispered. One of the waiters started toward me, then stopped, as if unsure what to do with an old woman in a blue cardigan and orthopedic shoes who'd just been told she wasn't welcome. I looked down at the pie, then back up at my daughter. "I baked this for you." Lydia gave a tight smile, the kind people wear at funerals when they want it over with. "That's sweet, but dessert's already catered." Mark leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table like he owned the place, which, technically, he didn't. "We really don't want to make a scene." "Of course not. God forbid." My cheeks were hot now, not from shame. Not quite. But something thicker. Older. Something that had been sitting in my chest for years, waiting for a moment like this to open its eyes. I set the pie gently on the hostess stand. Not a scene, just an offering. "I won't trouble you," I said. And I turned. The hallway was long, the carpet thick under my feet, swallowing the sound of my steps. As I passed the manager's station, someone called out, "Ma'am?" I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My legs felt unsteady, like all the weight of 77 years had suddenly landed in my knees. Then, just as I reached the front entrance, a voice I hadn't heard in almost 20 years cut through the air. "Mildred Kent?" I froze. I would have known that voice anywhere. Warm, gravelly, with the gentle pull of someone who once read cookbooks aloud to me while we made meatloaf on rainy afternoons. I turned around, and there he was, Harold Hensley. Thinner now, balder, but those same eyes, the same quiet smile. "You really don't remember me?" he asked, stepping closer, that same gold pen still tucked into the breast pocket of his blazer. "Of course I remember you," I said, too stunned to say more. "I own the place now," he said, nodding back toward the dining room. "Was just coming down from the office. Didn't expect to run into the reason I even got into this business." I blinked. "Reason?" "You," he said simply. "You gave me my first kitchen job in 1984. Told me I had decent hands and a respectful attitude. You were the only one who believed I could cook." I swallowed, my throat too tight to reply. "Come," he said, not as an invitation but as a certainty. "Let me show you something." And just like that, I followed him back down the hallway I'd just escaped, away from the table where there was no seat for me, toward something I couldn't yet name. But whatever it wasn't small. And it wasn't sorry. The hallway looked different, walking it beside Harold. It wasn't the same walk of shame I'd made minutes earlier, past polished wine racks and carefully dimmed lights. Now it felt like I had a purpose, though I wasn't sure what. "You still make that blueberry and lemon pie?" he asked, glancing sideways at me. I nodded slowly. "Just this morning, left it on the hostess stand. They didn't want it." He stopped walking. "They didn't want your pie?" "They said dessert was catered," I said softly. He didn't say anything right away, just gave a low whistle, the kind that didn't mean surprise. It meant disappointment. And then, just as quickly, he turned and led me past the main dining room, toward a wide glass door marked "Staff Only." "Where are we going?" "Upstairs," he said. "Office is above the kitchen, has a view of the whole floor." I followed. The stairs creaked slightly under my weight, but Harold didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did and chose not to mention it, which in its own way meant everything. The office was simple: clean desk, a row of papers held down with a mug, photos taped to the filing cabinet, Harold with a younger version of himself beside a food truck, Harold with a ribbon at some competition, Harold in a chef's coat, grinning like a schoolboy. He gestured for me to sit. I sank slowly into the leather chair, feeling my bones complain the way they always did at this hour. Harold took the other chair, leaned forward with elbows on his knees. "I've been meaning to reach out for years," he said. "Every time I thought of it, life got in the way. Thought I had more time." "You always think you do," I murmured. He nodded. "Until you don't." We sat in a gentle silence. Not awkward. More like letting air settle in a room. "I meant what I said downstairs," he added. "You're the reason I got into this business." "You're giving me too much credit," I said, half smiling. "No," he said. "No, I'm not. I was 21, fresh out of a halfway house, no references. No one would take a chance on me. You gave me dish duty, minimum wage, and a uniform that didn't fit. And when I showed up 3 minutes late my first shift, you didn't fire me. You asked if I'd eaten that day." "I remember," I said, a little stunned at myself. "You looked like you hadn't slept in a week." He smiled. "You gave me chicken soup and told me to stop apologizing for trying." I didn't know what to say. I had no memory of that exact line, but it sounded like me. The version of me that still believed effort was everything. "6 months later," he said, "you taught me to make hollandaise without curdling it. Said I had kitchen instincts." I'd never heard that before. I shook my head. "You were good, still are, I imagine." He leaned back in his chair. "You ever wonder what happened to that little catering business you helped fund?" I blinked. "You mean the one in Crestwood? The taco truck?" "It grew, then failed, then came back, then failed again, then—" He gestured at the air around us. "Now it's this." I glanced around. "This place is beautiful. It's profitable, too. Got a good team. 3 locations now, one in Oakland, one in Scottsdale. But this one's always been my heart." I looked out the window at the tables below. I could see the one where Lydia sat, laughing now, it seemed, though I couldn't hear the sound. "I'm glad you're doing well," I said. He studied me for a moment. "You're not." I didn't argue. Instead, I looked back at him. "What is this, Harold? A trip down memory lane?" He smiled again, that calm, deliberate smile of a man who's waited for the right moment. "No, Mildred. This is paperwork, He stood, walked to the cabinet, pulled out a folder, and laid it on the desk in front of me. I opened it, slowly. At the top, in embossed letters, Partnership Agreement. Underneath, my name. Full and formal, Mildred Lorraine Kent. I looked up. What is this? Harold folded his arms. It's what I've wanted to do for years. I finally got the guts to draw it up. I'm making you majority owner, 51%. I felt dizzy. Harold, I didn't invest. I haven't. You invested in me, he said. You fed me when I was broke, taught me how to hold a knife, lent me $500 from your own savings when my generator broke down. You called it a gift to good choices. You forgot all of that. I didn't. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't need to own this, I said at last. You don't need to, he said, but you deserve to. And frankly, this place could use your spine. The staff's strong, but they've never met a woman who can look a guest in the eye and say, "You're being rude, finish your wine and go." That's the kind of dignity this place was built on. I let out a shaky breath. So what? You want me to come in and sweep the floor? I want you, he said, to sit at any table in this house, as the boss, starting tonight. I stared at the papers as if they might vanish if I blinked too hard. The numbers were real. The ink smelled fresh. My name looked out of place at the top of something so formal, so solid. You can't just give me this, I said finally. It's too much. Harold leaned against the desk, arms folded loosely across his chest. It's not charity, Mildred. I'm settling a debt. You don't owe me anything. I do. You gave me a second chance before anyone else would even shake my hand. I built this place with those chances. Now I'm giving one back. I pressed my fingers into the leather armrests, trying to anchor myself. And what exactly do you expect me to do with it? Wear a name tag? Stand by the hostess desk smiling like a damn brochure? He chuckled. I expect you to be exactly who you've always been. Sharp, no nonsense, kind when it counts. You don't need to cook or pour drinks. Just be present. This place needs a backbone, and I'm not talking about spreadsheets. I looked down at the folder again, at my full name in bold letters. It felt like a trick, like a story someone else should be telling. But the papers were real, and the man offering them wasn't the type to exaggerate. What does Lydia know about this? I asked quietly. Harold's smile faded. She knows enough. My stomach turned. Did she try to stop you? She voiced her opinion. And what was her opinion? Harold took a breath. That you were too old. That you wouldn't be interested. That it might confuse the brand image to have someone of your generation so publicly associated with a modern restaurant. I closed the folder slowly, pressing my palm to the cover. Brand image, he nodded. And you said? I said this place wouldn't exist without you. And that if we're worried about image, maybe we should start by treating the people who built us with some damn respect. I sat in silence for a moment. Not out of shock, not anymore, but because I didn't trust what would come out of my mouth if I spoke too soon. She told me there was no seat at the table, I said at last, just now. Said the guest list was full. She's forgotten herself, Harold muttered. That's all. I shook my head. No, Harold. She remembers exactly who she is. What she's forgotten is me. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I looked up at him. Are you sure about this? No second thoughts? None. I had the lawyer draft it 2 weeks ago. I just didn't know when I'd see you again. Figured if I didn't do it now, I might never get the chance. And what about the staff? The team? They already know I've been looking for someone to share ownership with. They'll respect you more than you think. Most of them are here because I told them this was a place where second chances mattered. I stood, slower than I wanted to. The arthritis in my hips always got louder in the evenings. "All right then," I said, my voice steady now. "Let's give them something to talk about." Downstairs, the restaurant was humming the way good places do. Soft clinks of glassware, the low murmur of conversation, the occasional pop of laughter. I could see the main dining room now, from behind the angled glass of the staircase landing. There, at the long central table, Lydia was mid-toast, holding her champagne like a crown. I could make out some of her words: clients, investment, grateful for support. Support. That word stung worse than anything. Harold stopped near the host stand, where a young man in a white button-down blinked in surprise at the sight of us. "This is Ms. Kent," Harold said clearly. "She's now majority owner. Please make sure the team knows." The young man's eyes widened, but he nodded. "Yes, sir." "No need for a fuss," I added. "Just make sure the staff treats her the way they treat you." Harold turned to me, smiling. "Ready to say hello? To my daughter?" He shook his head. "To the restaurant?" I hesitated, then nodded. He led me to a side booth near the bar, where a few servers were folding napkins and wiping menus. They stepped back immediately, watching Harold with respect, and me with curiosity. "Ladies and gents," Harold said, "this is Mildred Kent. She's not just our new partner. She's the reason this place even exists." I raised a hand, feeling like an imposter at my own parade. "Don't let me interrupt," I said. "Just needed a place to sit." A young woman, maybe 22, maybe terrified, rushed to pull out a chair for me. I settled into it slowly, looking out across the dining room. Lydia hadn't noticed me yet. Mark either. They were too busy clinking glasses with a man in a blue blazer who looked like he sold real estate for sport. I watched them for a few minutes, that strange mix of emotion settling into my chest. Anger, sure, but also something quieter, something that felt suspiciously like peace. Harold returned with 2 plates of food, something roasted and delicate on a bed of greens. "Kitchen's best tonight," he said, setting one in front of me. "They asked what you'd like and guessed correctly." I picked up my fork. The food was perfect. Hot, balanced, thoughtful. A plate that had been prepared with attention, not just ingredients. I chewed, swallowed, and looked back toward that long table where I wasn't invited. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like begging for a seat. The thing about ownership, real ownership, is that no one needs to invite you in. You walk in because it's yours. And that evening, sitting there in my blue cardigan, with Harold sipping a glass of sparkling water beside me, I started to feel it settle into my bones. A waitress approached our table, nervous, twisting her apron string between her fingers. "Ma'am, Ms. Kent? Would you like anything else?" I smiled gently. "No, thank you, dear. This is perfect." She hesitated, then glanced toward Harold. He gave a small nod, and she relaxed. "Everyone's talking," she said in a near whisper. "They say you're the new boss." I didn't correct her. Didn't explain I'd only just signed the papers an hour ago. That part didn't matter. What mattered was the way she looked at me, not with pity, not with confusion, but with respect. The kind you don't earn in a day. Behind her, the staff buzzed quietly. Line cooks passing word to servers. The bartender glancing over as he polished glasses. No one approached the long table at the center of the room. Not right away. The attention had shifted, and Lydia noticed. I saw her brows pull together first. Her eyes swept the room like a radar looking for interference, then locked onto me. She didn't smile. She said something to Mark, who turned slowly in his chair, jaw tightening the moment he recognized me. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Calculations, consequences, damage control. They both stood. I kept chewing my last bite of roasted carrots. They crossed the floor like diplomats walking into enemy territory. Lydia wore the smile she kept for social media, polished, hollow, and 2 inches too wide. "Mother," she said. "What? What are you doing here?" Harold leaned back in his seat, letting me answer. "I'm having dinner," I said. Didn't seem right to go home hungry. "You said you were leaving," Mark added, his voice lower. "We didn't realize." "That I had another place to sit?" I finished for him. "No, I imagine you didn't." Lydia's eyes flicked to Harold, then back to me. Are you two?" "I'm the new majority owner," I said calmly. "Harold was kind enough to include me in something you both seem to have thought was yours alone." Mark's mouth opened, then closed. Lydia's smile cracked, just for a second. "You're what?" "Owner, dear. As in, the woman who now signs your reservation approvals." She blinked. "You're joking." I turned slightly in my seat and gave a nod to the hostess, who was watching us with barely concealed interest. "Would you mind bringing me the check for table 9? The hostess gave a tiny smirk and walked off. "You don't understand," Lydia said, voice dropping. "This is a business dinner. These are our clients. This was supposed to be private." "You made it public the moment you humiliated me in front of 30 people, I said. "This is my house now, and if I want to eat at my own table, I will." Mark's fists clenched at his sides. Lydia looked around, suddenly aware that eyes were on her now, not mine. "Mother," she whispered, "can we speak in private?" "No," I said, "not tonight." They stood there, stunned, like two people who'd just stepped onto a stage and realized the script had changed. Lydia's face, always so composed, twitched, just a little, just at the corner of her eye. Mark looked like he'd bitten down on something sour and couldn't spit it out. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I simply sat, in the seat they said didn't exist, and let the moment stretch. The dining room had grown quieter, not silent, but softer. Conversation turned inward. Forks paused. People knew a scene when it hovered at the edge of becoming. Harold stayed seated beside me, arms crossed, posture calm as Sunday. He wasn't going to interfere. He was letting me have this. All of it. "You're making a scene," Lydia said under her breath. I raised an eyebrow. "Am I? Funny? I thought I was just eating dinner." "You're embarrassing us," Mark added. "In front of clients." I glanced past them, toward the long table they'd so proudly filled. The man in the blue blazer, one of their so-called clients, gave me a curious look. I met it, unflinching. He looked away first. "Embarrassment," I said quietly, "is watching your own daughter look you in the eye and pretend you're invisible. Embarrassment is standing with a pie in your hands and being told there's no room. So if anyone should feel embarrassed tonight, I assure you, it isn't me." Lydia's jaw clenched. "We didn't mean it that way." "You did," I said. "Maybe not with malice, but with comfort. Because you've grown comfortable thinking I don't matter anymore." I watched it hit her. Not a blow, not sharp, but something worse. Recognition. Mark cleared his throat. Look, maybe we got carried away. Maybe we didn't handle it well. But this is not how things are done in professional settings. This isn't a professional setting, I said. This is a restaurant. My restaurant. And you're standing in it because I didn't throw you out. The words landed like bricks. Now, I added, lifting my napkin from my lap and setting it gently on the table, if you'll excuse me, I believe I still have dessert coming. Lydia opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came. Mark pulled her by the elbow. Let's go, he muttered. We'll talk later. They turned, retreating in silence, but not before the hostess arrived with a small plate in hand. Lemon tart, she said to me with a shy smile. On the house. Thank you, darling. I took the first bite slowly. It wasn't quite as good as mine, but it didn't have to be. It was warm, respectful, offered, not expected. Across the room, Lydia and Mark returned to their seats, stiff as mannequins. I watched Lydia force a laugh at something one of the clients said, but it never reached her eyes. Funny how quickly power changes hands, not with noise, not with shouting, but with stillness, with dignity, with presence. Harold refilled my water glass. You handled that better than I would have. I didn't do it for show. I know. That's why it worked. I looked down at the golden crust on my plate, then back out across the room. No one tells you, I said, more to myself than him, that one day you'll stop being part of their plans, that they'll stop seeing you as necessary, that you'll still be breathing and loving and baking, but to them, you'll just fade. Harold nodded. They're wrong. I looked at him. They are now. The dessert plate was empty now, but I stayed seated, letting the silence inside me settle. Not a bitter silence, not anymore, but one filled with clarity. The kind that arrives when you stop explaining yourself to people who never ask to understand. Harold leaned forward, elbows on the table. Want to take a walk through the kitchen? I smiled. Now that I own the place, I suppose I should know where the knives are kept. He chuckled and stood, offering me his arm. I took it, more out of habit than need. I still walked fine, even if my knees argued sometimes. The kitchen doors swung open with a rush of heat and spice. The air inside was alive. Sizzles, clanks, the soft rhythm of people working in sync. A sous chef looked up, startled for a second, then nodded toward Harold. This is her, he said. Ms. Kent. The room shifted slightly, not dramatically, just enough to feel it, like a current changing direction. Heads lifted. One of the younger cooks stood a little straighter. A tall woman with a black bandana stepped forward, wiping her hands on a towel. I'm Carmen, head chef. We shook hands, hers warm, strong. Heard a lot about you, she added. Didn't expect you to look like someone's grandmother. I gave a small smile. I am someone's grandmother, 3 times over. Then they're lucky, she said, with a smirk that felt more like respect than sarcasm. This place could use more people who've earned their stripes. We did a slow round. The prep station, the walk-in cooler, the grill. I asked questions, not to test them, but because I was genuinely curious. It had been a long time since I'd walked a kitchen that wasn't my own. Back in the dining room, we paused near the hostess stand, the same spot where I'd left my pie hours ago. It was gone now. I didn't ask what happened to it. Think you'll want an office upstairs? Harold asked. I looked around, the candles flickering gently on tables, the low murmur of conversation returning to its usual rhythm. "No," I said. "I think I want a chair. One that's mine. Right out here." "You sure?" "I don't need a desk, Harold. I need to be seen." He nodded slowly. "That I can arrange." At that moment, the front doors opened and a familiar figure stepped inside. Tall, lanky, all elbows and good intentions. "Grandma?" I blinked. "Nathan?" "My grandson, my middle one. Lydia's boy. 18, maybe 19 now, already taller than Mark." He spotted me and rushed over. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said. "Mom said you were busy." I smiled gently. "She says a lot of things." He looked around, then back at me. "This place is amazing. I've never been." "You are now," I said, and then I added, without ceremony, "I own it." His eyes widened. "Wait, what?" "I'm not a guest, sweetheart. Not anymore." Harold stepped forward and extended a hand. "You must be Nathan." Yeah," he said, shaking it cautiously. "You're the chef?" "I'm the one who asked your grandmother to be my partner." Nathan looked at me. Something dawning in his face. A shift. Maybe even pride. "Does Mom know?" "Oh," I said lightly. "She knows." Nathan sat across from me now, still processing. He looked at the linen napkin in his lap like it might whisper answers. "So, wait," he said again, his voice lower. "You're actually the boss." "I'm the owner," I corrected gently. "Harold and I are partners, but yes, that means I have keys, and I get a say." He glanced toward the long table where his parents sat, now visibly avoiding eye contact with our side of the room. "I didn't know," he said. "They never said anything. I thought you were just, I don't know, helping them with the startup or something." I let the words hang between us for a moment. "They didn't tell you because they didn't want it to be true," I said. "Because if I mattered, they'd have to treat me like I did." He looked genuinely ashamed, not for anything he'd done, but for the quiet complicity of having not asked. "Do you remember," I asked, "when your mother and Mark came to see me 5 years ago? You were 13. He nodded. "They said they were starting a business. You loaned them some money." I smiled. A bitter, soft thing. "They didn't call it a loan. They called it an opportunity for legacy." He winced. "That sounds like something Dad would say." "They brought papers, Nathan. Mark printed out a whole pitch deck. It had bullet points and fake graphs. Lydia called it a vision for the family." He looked down, embarrassed. "They told me," I continued, "that my name would be on the original lease, that once things took off, I'd get monthly returns. Then they stopped returning my calls. Said the name had to be changed for liability reasons. I was never listed as an owner." "Wait," Nathan said, sitting up. "They cut you out." "Not officially," I said. "Just quietly. That's worse, really." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking toward his parents again. "That's messed up. They did it because they thought I'd never fight back, that I'd be too polite, too old, that I wouldn't want to make trouble." "But you did," he said. "I didn't make trouble," I said. "I took back what was mine." He smiled now, just slightly. "That's kind of badass." I laughed, a real one this time. "Don't let your mother hear you say that." He leaned in across the table, more serious now. "Can I work here?" I blinked. "What?" "I mean it. I hate my summer job. They treat me like I'm invisible. I want to learn how this place runs, how you run it." I studied his face. Not a trick, not a performance. Just a boy who saw something and wanted to belong to it. You show up on time, you listen more than you talk, and you don't expect special treatment. Deal?" He grinned. "Deal." Harold returned then, holding a second pie tin in his hands. "You won't believe this," he said, placing it on our table. "Turns out someone saved your pie from earlier. Carmen heated it up." I looked down. My pie, slightly singed around the edges, still holding its shape. Nathan reached for a fork. "Wait, is this the pie?" I nodded. "The one your mother didn't want." He took a bite, eyes widening. They were insane. And for the first time that night, I let myself feel it. Not triumph, not revenge, just something better. A beginning. 2 days later, Harold called me back to the office. I thought it was about staffing, maybe something to do with the new delivery system he'd been testing. But when I opened the door, the look on his face told me it wasn't about food or schedules. "There's something you should see," he said, tapping a manila folder. I sat down slowly, easing into the chair I'd already started thinking of as mine. "Go ahead." He slid the folder toward me. "Documents from the original partnership filings, the ones your daughter submitted." My name wasn't there, not once. I flipped through them slowly, page by page. LLC forms, tax registrations, ownership percentages, all under Mark's name. "She told me I was an honorary partner," I said, more to myself than to him. "She said it didn't need to be legal because I was family." Harold nodded. "I believe she meant that at the time, but intentions don't matter much when lawyers get involved." I stared at the final page, the one that showed Mark and Lydia each owning 49%. The remaining 2% assigned to a silent investor I didn't recognize. "You know who that is?" I asked. Harold frowned. "It's her college roommate, Jill. She never even contributed. They just gave her a cut to block anyone else from majority control." I closed the folder gently. "Did she ask you to cut me out?" I asked. Harold hesitated. "She called me 6 months ago, said you were slipping, that you weren't making sound decisions anymore. She said you were showing signs of confusion." I looked up sharply. "She said that?" "She did." I gripped the arms of the chair to stop my hands from shaking. "Did you believe her?" "I asked her if you'd been medically evaluated. She said no, but that the signs were obvious. I told her I wouldn't make a move against you without documentation, and even then, I wasn't sure I'd follow through. She wanted you to take the business away from me before it ever got to me," I said. "She wanted control," Harold said gently. "She didn't think you'd fight for it." I nodded, letting the weight of it settle. The years of careful distancing, the polite evasions, the way she'd stopped asking about my health, not because she didn't care, but because she'd already decided who I was. Someone fading. And fading people, apparently, didn't need signatures or seats at the table. "She never asked," I said. "Never once sat down and said, 'Mom, what do you want?'" "No," Harold agreed. "She assumed she already knew." I sat there a long while, thinking of all the times I'd shown up for her. Graduations, court dates, the emergency room at 2 a.m. when Nathan was teething and she was too exhausted to drive. All the checks I wrote without being asked. All the furniture I helped them buy when the first house flooded. All the times I'd stepped aside so she could lead. "I want a formal statement drawn up," I said finally. Harold tilted his head. "About what?" "Ownership," I said. "I want my name on everything, legally, visible, public. I want it in the window. I want it on the staff notice board. And I want it in the email signature that goes out with every reservation confirmation. He grinned. Now you're talking like a boss. I'm tired of being the footnote in my own story, I said. It ends now. When I got home that night, my phone was flashing. Voicemails, missed calls, a few texts from Lydia. Mom, we need to talk. There's a lot of confusion right now. You're misunderstanding what happened. Please call me. I didn't reply. Not yet. Let her sit in the silence. Let her feel what it's like when the center she's taken for granted stops revolving around her. The staff meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. I arrived 15 minutes early. Old habits. Harold was already there, arranging chairs in the main dining room, pushing tables aside to make space. "Didn't expect you this early?" he said, handing me a fresh mug of coffee. "I like to see things before they begin," I answered, sipping. People say a lot with their posture before they open their mouths. One by one, the staff filtered in. Chefs in aprons, hosts in pressed shirts, servers still tying their hair back or adjusting their name tags. I recognized most of them by now. Carmen, the head chef, Lucas, the bar manager, Shayla from front desk. They took their seats, some curious, others cautious. Harold stood first. "Thanks for coming," he said. "As you all know, there's been a change in the structure of this place. I wanted you to hear it from both of us, together." He nodded to me. I rose slowly. Not for effect, just because my knees had their own timing now. "My name is Mildred Kent," I said. "Some of you already know me. For those who don't, I'm the reason Harold still knows how to poach an egg properly." A few chuckles broke the tension. "I've joined as a partner," I continued, "but not just in title. I'm here. I'll be around. I'll be asking questions, watching how we treat each other and how we treat the people who walk through that door." Carmen raised a brow. "What's your role exactly?" "I'm not here to critique your recipes," I said, "but I am here to make sure this place holds on to what made it special in the first place." "And that is?" Lucas asked. "Kindness," I said. "Competence, community. You don't build a good restaurant by wowing food critics. You build it by remembering the name of the woman who comes in every Tuesday for chicken soup and sits by the window because it helps her feel less alone." The room went quiet. A few heads nodded. "I won't be on payroll," I added. "But I've asked Harold to give me weekly updates. I want to know who's showing up late, who's taking liberties, and who's going the extra mile." A young server raised her hand. "Does this mean there are changes coming?" "Yes," I said, "but not all at once. And not without reason." Shayla crossed her arms. "What about Lydia? She said she was in charge." Harold spoke then. "Lydia and Mark are no longer involved in daily operations. They may still have investment claims, but decision-making is under new management. Effective immediately. I saw relief in some faces, uncertainty in others. That's all for today," I said. "Go back to work, and don't worry, I don't bite." They laughed, stood, shuffled back to their roles, except for Carmen. She waited until the room had emptied, then came over. "My mother," she said, "was a line cook in Brooklyn for 30 years. Never made it past the grill because no one took her seriously." I nodded. "Sounds familiar." "She died thinking she'd been replaceable." "She wasn't." "No," Carmen agreed. "She wasn't. Neither are you." Then she added, with the smallest smile, "Welcome to the kitchen." Later that afternoon, Harold came into the office with a small package. "This came for you," he said, handing it over. No name, no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside, a thick, embossed envelope. My name in silver ink. And inside that, an invitation to Lydia's new event. A family reconciliation dinner, hosted at a different venue across town. I laughed, not bitter, just tired. She was already trying to reclaim the narrative, and for once, I wasn't going to follow her script. The next day, I walked into the dining room just after noon and saw Nathan wiping down menus at the host stand. His shirt was freshly pressed, sleeves rolled up, shoes polished. But it was the look in his eyes that struck me. Focused, present, like he wasn't just passing through. "Early shift?" I asked. "Volunteered," he said, standing straighter. "I wanted to learn how opening prep works. Carmen said I could shadow if I finished setup." "Smart," I said. "Do the quiet work first. That's how people notice." He gave a shy smile. "Everyone's been really nice. Not just because of you. I mean, I think they actually like having me around." "They probably do," I said gently. "You're not afraid to start small. That's rare these days." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Did Mom really try to cut you out of the business?" I nodded once. "I don't get it," he said, frowning. "She always talks about family, about values. She's the one who told me to always honor where we come from. She believes that, as long as she gets to define where we come from." Nathan looked down at the menu in his hands, then back up at me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why didn't you push back sooner? I mean, you helped raise me. You helped raise her. Why let it get this far?" I took a breath. Not defensive, just long. Heavy. "Because I thought I was doing the right thing," I said. "I thought if I gave quietly, stayed humble, didn't ask for recognition, it would all come back around in kindness." "Did it?" "Not from her," I said. "But from you?" "Maybe." He flushed a little, but didn't look away. "Here's what I've learned, Nathan," I said softly. "If you give to people who never learned how to be grateful, they won't start just because your offering is bigger. They'll just expect more next time." He nodded slowly. "I never wanted revenge," I added. "I just wanted peace. This restaurant, it gave me that. It gave me back a name." Nathan swallowed hard. "I'm glad you didn't let her erase you." "She tried," I said. "She's still trying." He looked puzzled. "Still?" I pulled the envelope from my bag and handed it to him. He opened it carefully, scanning the elegant script. "Reconciliation dinner?" "Apparently," I said dryly. "At the Redwood Club, next weekend. Formal attire, a curated guest list." Nathan frowned. "She's trying to manage the fallout." "Of course," I said. "Public shame isn't her style. She wants to reset the story, turn it into a graceful misunderstanding. One where I was never really excluded, just misplaced. Forgotten in the rush." "You going?" I shook my head. "I already have a table, right here." He nodded firmly, then after a moment's pause, "I'll skip it too." "You don't have to," I said gently. "You're still her son." "I'm yours too," he said. "And I'd rather spend my weekend learning from someone who doesn't rewrite history just to feel better about herself." I felt something shift then. Not loud, not triumphant, just solid. Like a door closing quietly behind me. And another one opening, just ahead. That Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang while I was trimming the rosemary bush by the porch. I wasn't expecting anyone. Most folks called ahead. But when I opened the door, I didn't even need a second to recognize the woman on the steps. "Frances?" She smiled, lines deepening around her mouth the way they only do in women who've lived honestly. "You gonna make me stand out here or let an old friend have some tea?" "Tea, of course," I said, stepping aside. and something stronger if we feel like it. Frances Ellery, my sister, by life, if not by blood. We'd grown up 3 houses apart, started work the same week at the garment factory, married men with the same kind of rough hands and tired kindness. She moved out west 30 years ago after her husband passed, but we always found our way back to each other eventually. In grief, in holidays, in silence. We sat in the kitchen, the late sun sliding across the floor in long gold bars. I poured the tea. "I heard," she said after the first sip. "Which part?" Her eyes twinkled. "The part where you bought a restaurant with your spine." I smiled, shaking my head. "I didn't buy it." "It was given." "No, Millie. It was earned. Harold just made it official." We sat quietly for a while, the kettle still warm between us. "Lydia wrote me," she added. "Asked if I'd talk to you. She says you're being performative, that you're causing confusion in the family." I barked out a soft laugh. "Performative? Me?" "She thinks you're trying to make a point," Frances said, gently now. "That you've held on to old resentments too long." "I held onto my checkbook longer," I muttered. Frances leaned forward. "You don't owe me an explanation. I've seen how they treat you. Even from states away, I could hear the silence." "You know what hurts most?" I said, staring into my cup. "It's not that she left me out of her plans. It's that she never thought I might have plans of my own. Like my life just stopped when hers got bigger. She sees you how the world taught her to see older women," Frances said. "Quiet, convenient, endlessly giving." I looked at her. "And now?" "She's terrified." "Because you reminded her we don't disappear just because they stop looking." We talked for hours about Lydia, about Nathan, about our dead husbands, and the ache that never quite goes away. We laughed too, the kind of laughing that's half about joy, half about endurance. When she stood to leave, Frances took both my hands in hers. "You remember what I said when they canceled that anniversary dinner 3 years ago?" she asked. "That it was a blessing in disguise?" "No," she said. I said, "One day you're going to remind them whose blood paid for the silverware." "You've done it, Millie." I smiled, but it was different now, not defiant. Just full. "Feels less like revenge and more like reclaiming something," I said. "Damn right," she whispered. "Now go wear that blue dress like it's armor." That night, I opened the closet. The dress was still there. Dark navy, simple cut, soft wool. I'd bought it for Lydia's engagement dinner years ago, back when I still thought showing up would be enough. I slipped it on, and this time, it fit like purpose. I didn't expect her to show up at the restaurant. Not after the Redwood Club fiasco, not after the staff meeting, and certainly not after Harold posted the new ownership plaque beside the host stand, Mildred Kent, partner and founder's mentor, where every guest could see it. But there she was, Lydia, wearing a cream blazer and that smile she used at charity events, the one that never reached her eyes. I spotted her through the side window near the wine rack. She hesitated outside for a moment, adjusting her sleeve, then walked in like she had somewhere to be, and everyone was late meeting her. Nathan saw her first. He gave me a look across the room, a question. I nodded. Let her come. She stopped at the host stand, eyes flicking to the plaque. Her mouth twitched. "Is my mother here?" she asked the young hostess, who looked toward me immediately. I rose from the chair I'd claimed earlier that afternoon, the one near the window where the sun dipped low and warm around 5. "Right here, dear," I said. "No appointment necessary." She crossed the room slowly, her heels making soft, deliberate sounds against the floor. I could feel every eye subtly shift our way. Not nosy, just aware. "Can we speak in private?" she asked. "We're speaking now." She sat across from me, folding her hands like she was ready to conduct an interview. "I want to clarify a few things," she said. "There's been a lot of misunderstanding. Then perhaps you should begin with an apology." She blinked, thrown off. "Mother." "No," I said, voice calm. "Before we clarify anything, you say it. Out loud." A pause. "I'm sorry," she said tightly. "If you felt excluded." "Not if," I corrected. "I was excluded." She took a breath through her nose. "Fine. I'm sorry. You were excluded. That wasn't our intention." "It was Mark's," I said. "But you let it happen." Her jaw tightened. "I was trying to protect the business." "By rewriting the truth?" I asked. "By pretending I was senile when I asked to see the papers? By telling Harold I was showing signs just because I asked questions you didn't want to answer?" "That was a poor choice," she said. "And I've regretted it." I leaned back. "You haven't regretted anything. You've been managing optics." She didn't answer. "I raised you better than this, Lydia." Her eyes flashed. "You raised me to survive, to fight for a place at the table. I did exactly what you taught me." I shook my head slowly. "You learned the wrong lesson." She looked away, then back. "I came here to propose a solution." I laughed, quiet and flat. "Of course you did. I think we can restructure," she continued. "Include you officially in the brand language, update the website, do a joint interview with the press. Make it a family-forward narrative. Clean, elegant, mutually beneficial." "No." She blinked again. "You haven't even heard—" "I said no," I repeated. "You don't get to decide what parts of me are useful and which parts should be hidden. I'm not a brand. I'm a person. You're letting pride get in the way of legacy." I stood. "Pride built this place. Mine. Harold's. And it's the only reason it still stands." "Mother." "You've made your choices, Lydia. I'm done rearranging myself to fit inside them." She sat there, stunned. I didn't wait for more. I walked toward the kitchen, not quickly, not dramatically, just firmly. Behind me, I heard her chair slide back. She didn't follow. Carmen met me in the prep room. "All good?" she asked, casually slicing herbs. "Better than good," I said, reaching for an apron. "Let's get back to work." And that was it. No slamming doors, no shouting, just truth, clean and hard like polished steel. Sometimes dignity isn't in what you reclaim, it's in what you refuse to perform. The second dinner looked nothing like the first. No long tables with assigned seats. No business cards tucked beside wine glasses. No speeches about partnerships or projections. Just a quiet evening, a soft playlist, candles burning slow. This time, it was my table, and everyone at it had chosen to be there. Nathan arrived early, already wearing his black server's apron, even though I told him to sit and eat, not work. Carmen joined us on her break, hair tied up and laughter easy. Harold brought out 2 bottles of wine from his private shelf and insisted we open both. And then there was Frances, who walked in like she owned the place and whispered, "I wore perfume, so don't let anyone seat me near the salmon." We all laughed. The room wasn't full, but it was warm and real. The kind of gathering where people actually listen between bites, where no one checks their phone, where no one's trying to prove anything. Nathan handed me a folded napkin with my initials stitched in one corner. "Made it at school last semester," he said, a little embarrassed. Didn't know what to do with it then. It belongs here, I said. Dinner was slow and generous. Roasted chicken, grilled peaches, fresh bread. Nothing fancy, just right. Harold gave a quiet toast, not standing, not asking for attention, just lifting his glass mid-conversation and saying, "To women who don't vanish when they're told to." We all clinked our glasses. And then, for the first time in weeks, I looked around and didn't feel like I had to brace myself for anything. No performance, no defense, just presence. After the plates were cleared and the light had dimmed a little more, Carmen handed me a small box. "It's stupid," she said, "but I wanted to mark the day." Inside was a brass nameplate, M. Kent, owner. I ran my finger over the engraving. "You made this?" She shrugged. "I told the metal guy it was for the backbone of the kitchen. He got it wrong the first time," wrote matriarch. "I told him that's not a title, that's a warning." We laughed, but I kept the plate close. Later, when most had gone home and the last chair was pushed in, I sat for a while alone. Harold passed by with a towel slung over his shoulder and paused. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than I've been in years." He sat down beside me, this time not as a co-owner or chef or friend, but as someone who understood that the most powerful thing a person can be is still here. "You think she'll come around?" he asked. "Lydia?" He nodded. "Maybe," I said. "But if she does, it won't be because I begged." He sipped his tea. "You ever think it would end like this?" I looked around, at the candles, the empty plates, the quiet hum of the dishwasher still running in the back. "No," I said. "But I never thought it had to end at all. I just forgot I was allowed to begin again." The first time a customer asked to speak to the owner, it caught me off guard. She was in her 60s, dressed sharp but simple, with a look that said she'd worked too hard for too long and didn't have patience for nonsense. Her name was Dolores. "I want to speak to whoever made that soup," she said, arms folded. "Because I haven't tasted anything like it since my mother died." Harold pointed her my way without hesitation. She walked straight over to my table, looked me up and down, and said, "Was it you?" I nodded. "Good," she said. "Because I came in here with a rotten headache, and now I feel like someone pressed a warm cloth to my whole life." I laughed. "That's what chicken broth is for." She stayed for dessert, said she'd be back next Thursday, brought her neighbor the week after that. They've been regulars ever since. It became a rhythm. Women I didn't know asking if they could sit with me for 5 minutes. Some wanted to talk. Some just wanted to be seen. One brought divorce papers. Another brought a prayer card. One brought a broken watch her father had given her in 1971 and asked if I thought it was worth fixing. I told her, "If you love it, it's already fixed." That's the thing about being a woman who's survived. You become a lighthouse, even when you're tired. People don't need you to explain the storms. They just want to know you stayed standing. I didn't advertise myself. I didn't have a name tag that said, "Wise Elder in Residence." But somehow, they knew. Women like us. We recognize each other. We've learned how to fold grief into recipes, how to take betrayal and sew it into cushions, how to let the hurt live beside us without letting it win. Lydia still hadn't called, not since that afternoon at the restaurant. I knew she was watching, though. We shared too many contacts in town for her not to hear the whispers. There's a word people kept using when they talked about what I'd done: graceful. Mildred handled it with such grace. She responded so gracefully. What a graceful woman. But here's the truth. Grace isn't soft. Grace is steel wrapped in silence. It's standing your ground without shouting. It's knowing exactly what was done to you and choosing not to let it rot your voice. I didn't win because I fought back. I won because I stopped waiting to be invited. One morning, Harold asked if I wanted to update the menu with a new dish in my name. I was thinking something cozy, he said. Classic, but personal. Something that says, she built this with her hands. I thought for a moment. Then I said, call it no seat at the table? He raised an eyebrow. Really? People will ask, I said. And when they do, we'll tell them it's a roast chicken with lemon and blueberry glaze, served with dignity. He laughed for a full minute. God, I've missed your sense of humor. I didn't lose it, I said. Just had to dig it out from under all that politeness. The dish sold out every Friday. One afternoon, while I was reviewing the monthly order logs, a letter arrived. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Lydia. Inside, a short note. No apology, not really. Just 3 lines. I don't know how to come back from this, but I know I was wrong. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. I read it twice, then folded it slowly. I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Not because I hated her. I didn't. But some bridges don't need to be burned. They just need to stay closed until both sides are ready to meet without excuses. And for now, I had work to do. A business to run. A kitchen full of women who looked at me like I was something solid. I'd spent years shrinking, years biting my tongue, years letting others write the ending before I even finished the page. Now I wrote it myself, with a fountain pen and a steady hand. They still come in, you know, the women, some older than me, some younger, some loud, some quiet. They come alone, or with grandkids, or with nothing but a tote bag and a look that says, I don't know where else to be today. They sit near the window. The same window I sat by the night Lydia told me there was no seat. They order the soup, or the chicken, or the pie, if it's Thursday. They linger longer than necessary, and sometimes, before they leave, they lean in and whisper, I saw what you did. I wish I had your strength. I didn't think we were allowed to start again. And I always tell them the truth, plain and clear, without decoration. You are. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to stop apologizing. You're allowed to return to yourself, even if no one claps, even if no one notices right away, even if they say, but you're just a grandmother, just a helper, just a shadow in the corner of a story that doesn't belong to you. No. You were the story. You always were. Nathan works full-time now. He knows the layout of the kitchen better than I do. Carmen teases him, calls him mini boss. He rolls his eyes, but he likes it. I can tell. Last week he got a tattoo, something small on his wrist. His mother hasn't seen it yet, but I have. It says MK. He said it could stand for anything. Maybe for make kindness, he joked. Maybe for Mildred Kent. Or maybe just for the moment I stopped trying to be small. That one made me cry, quietly. The kind of tears you don't explain. Harold's retiring soon. Says it's time. Says the place is safe in my hands and in Nathan's. I believe him. We've already trained a new sous chef. Strong girl, quick hands, faster mind. We gave her a key last week. The circle keeps widening. Lydia hasn't shown up again, not in person, but she sends flowers sometimes. Cards. A box of tea I like, with a note that said simply, I remember. I haven't written back. I'm still not sure if silence is the boundary or the bridge. Maybe it's both. I don't need her to rewrite the past. I just need her to live differently in the future. And you reading this. Maybe you're not a restaurant owner. Maybe you've never been pushed aside at a dinner table or rewritten out of someone's version of events. But maybe you have felt the slow erasure, the polite dismissal, the ache of being needed only when it's convenient. Let me say this. You don't have to stay there. You don't need permission to return to yourself. You don't need a title or a platform or a crowd. You need a chair, your own voice, and the quiet decision to stop waiting for someone else to invite you back into your own life. So pull out your seat. Plate your own damn pie. And if someone ever says there's no room for you, make room. If this story meant something to you, share it. Not for me. For every woman who's ever been told she was too late, too much, or too invisible, let them know we're still here, and we're not leaving quietly.